in store. Comments may also be submitted to the board via email at trustees@cdaschools.org or in writing through our clerk. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we get it? Jimmy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, today's agenda is approved. And right away, if someone could go ahead and bring me the public comment. Terrific. Want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It's a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow public comment at the beginning of our meeting, limited to no more than 45 minutes total, unless we decide as a board to extend that time frame. Those wishing to address the board during this public comment period are limited to one comment, not to exceed 3 minutes. The designated time, you are welcome to come up to the podium. There might be a switch to turn it on or off. Please state your name and your city of residence. Please keep in mind that board members will not respond to public comments. If you have handouts for the board, you can turn them into our clerk, who will then disseminate them on your behalf. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. Thank you. This afternoon, I'd like to welcome Mark Price up to the podium.
Test. My name's Mark Price. Board, how are you? Good to see you again. I've got 3 minutes. I'm going to make this short and sweet. You guys got a big problem at Lakes Middle School. You've got an individual that is running to and fro. I don't know if the board's aware of this or not, but I'm about to make you aware of it.
But Mr. Price, I'll stop you right there. If it's personally directed or if it has to do with a personnel issue, we can't hear that.
Well, it's a representative of Human Rights Education Institute. And when a parent goes in there, you have to stop, you have to sign in, there's protocol. This individual has no protocol, and it's on camera, there's multiple witnesses. What is this individual doing to the students? And the school system paying this person to go in here? We all know who it is. So why are they going to that school and meeting with children? So that's the first problem. Second problem is the same school, Lakes Middle School. There was a woman. I'm sure you guys have seen the video. Her daughter was basically groomed by a counselor. The counselor is still at that school.
But Mr. Price, we won't talk about a counselor or any personnel from
Okay, so how do you guys, you need to submit it in the email or what? Because there's nothing being done.
You need to submit your concerns to our clerk.
To the clerk, and the clerk will get it to the proper people then?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Especially if it's a personnel issue, we can't from the podium. So if there's another topic you'd like to discuss.
Well, yes, there's one more thing I want to touch on before I get out of here. So I know we've closed down one school already, and I know for a fact that there's going to be another vote on the levy coming up. So you guys voted to give raises last year. We closed the school this year, and I don't know, do you guys vote every year to give raises out like candy and while we're closing schools? I would hope that that's not on the topic of agenda for raises. And I'm going to get you guys a thumb drive. I have lots of information on thumb drives. I'll supply you all with it, and you can see the hiring that has been done since your superintendent took over. It's phenomenal. You won't believe it till you see it. So our attendants are down, and the hiring's up here. It doesn't make any sense. So I know personally I've talked to a lot of people in the community, and until the spending is under control, you know, I understand that you guys have to fly out of town and go for meetings out of state. I've seen the pictures of the 5-star hotels that you guys stay at. Yeah, I don't expect you guys to stay in Motel 6, but there's a big difference in Motel 6 and Trump Tower. You get me? There's an equal ground without paying $400 or $500 a night. So I think the spending really needs to be looked at before you guys ever approach the community for another levy. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you give those thumb drives to, then she'll disseminate them. Thank you. Deborah Lilwright. Did I say that right? Or Deborah Wright? Deborah L. Wright, sorry. Put it all together. So Deborah Wright. Thank you.
Hello.
There might be a button.
3320 North 15th Street in Coeur d'Alene. I also go by Penny. I know this is a business, and I know you guys have to treat it like a business. But there's a lot of people that are going to get hurt. There's a lot of people that have 20 years. Personally, I don't. I decided to become, I've worked with you guys for years, and I decided to help out because you guys were short, and I'm a permanent person. But there are a lot of people with you guys going into contracting out in food service that are going to have to retire, lose their pension. Some of them are only working for 6 years. Some of them are working for 4 years as Percy's, and they have 1 more year. This was told to us really, actually, it was supposed to be the last day of school, but something happened over at Coeur d'Alene. We had a blackout. So we were told Tuesday we were having a meeting. And really, I thought it was a pat on the back, which was a little bit that Eric gave us, you know, not having a director. But I really hope you guys really think about contracting food service out and give us another chance. You know, give the new people, I know you don't have a director. I'm hoping Seth is part of this, but we really would like to have another chance. And I think it would be in your favor to give us another chance than to upset everybody. There's a lot of people that have to retire, otherwise they lose everything out of their Percy's. So I just hope you guys have a consideration of what you're doing. I am from California. My school district tried to contract out, and it did not work very well. So it's just something for you guys to think about. And I know the other schools around our vicinity, because a bunch of us have been looking at Atlas and was it Lakeland School District. And I know we have the kitchen, and they're really excited that we have the kitchen, that we can do it, cook and everything. Atlas, not Athol. Athol, they bring it in. My concern on that is a lot of people say it's mediocre. You know, it's not up to 145 degrees, the hamburgers and stuff. So there's a little issue. So I hope you guys really look into it, and I wish we did have a director for food service, and I know it is hard.
And Deborah, I'm going to have you
So,
bring it to close.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Deborah, thanks for your service and thanks for your comments. Pam Waller.
I live at 3733 North Sutters Way in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. My name's Pam, and I've worked for the Coeur d'Alene School District for 24 years. I've worked at Woodland Middle School in food service, and I'm the kitchen manager there. And by them contracting us out, I will lose all my sick days. I get half of the amount of sick days I turn into dollars for insurance. And if I don't retire, I will lose it. But at the meeting, Eric said that we would not lose it. But I talked to Shelley, and I will lose it. And we have personal days in our bank. We don't get those. You know, we don't get paid for those either, so we lose that. And here, you know, he said we get all a big raise and everything, and then now they want to contract us out because they can't afford us. And I don't think it's fair. The full-time people are the ones that are affected by this. We pay into Percy. We're not going to have Percy anymore. We don't even know what the benefits will be. But we were told that we would not have Percy, maybe 401k. And so I just wonder, what about our personal days? Will we get paid for those? And I might have to retire because I don't want to lose my sick days, because I have over a year of full-time insurance with that. I have over $12,000 that I would lose if I don't retire now, if you guys vote to have another company come in. I won't be employed by the school district, and I love working for the school district. I had one more year before I retired, and now I feel like I have to retire early because of this. And it's not fair.
Thank you, Pam. Linda Mick.
Hi, I'm Linda Mick. I live at 5926 East Sleepy Lane, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I guess I'm really just here to second what Pam said. I've been employed since 2006. I have, unfortunately, about 6, 7, 8 years I need to go before I can consider retiring. I'm in my mid-50s. This is quite a blow to us to hear that our department is looking to be contracted out. Feels really, really unfair. Again, we went in June to what we thought was a thank you for our hard work meeting, and we were blindsided by what was said to us. Yeah, you're going to probably get a raise with the new company, and but your Percy stops. That's really, really unfair. And I mean, I guess we really feel like, why us? You know, we have been dedicated. You can look at a lot of our kitchen managers have been there many, many years and have been devoted and have really stood by the Coeur d'Alene School District through highs and lows. We've got a great track record. Our higher ups have been the ones that are going out, but we down in the trenches, we've been really steadfast. And this just really feels unfortunate. And my concerns are the same as Pam's. My Percy, my sick days, we deserve to be paid out or get some kind of bank like we would have if we retired. For those of us who have many, many years into that, didn't abuse our sick days, came, you know, fought through times when we could have taken advantage of using those, we didn't. And we deserve some kind of, you know, if in fact you guys choose to go with contracting us out, we hope and expect to be treated fairly by this. There, you know, could be quite an outcry of people unhappy. So just hoping that you look at everything, not just the numbers of whatever this food service contracting is proposing, but don't forget about us people. We've been there. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for right now. Next up, we'll have any superintendent comments.
I think at this time I'll just postpone those. When we get to those specific items later on down, we'll add those at that time.
Thanks. And thank you, ladies, for your service. Food service is hard and long and needed, so thank you all for that. We're going to move into a time then, let me get going here, of just some personal electronic devices and a board discussion. I've heard from the board, every board member at some point of let's talk cell phones. And Rebecca, could we get it on the agenda? And so thought we would start that conversation with us and then decide what and where we might want to go with that discussion and where we might need to maybe potentially direct admin to come back to us. So there's been, obviously in the news lately, there's been a number of districts that have picked up the cell phone conversation and are moving it forward. And so it's probably timely that we at least re-pick it up. We did receive some information today. I haven't had a chance to review that, just in an email from Seth regarding the 2017 cell phone policy update. And so we'll need to review that. So I'll just open it up to us as trustees, and we each have had, I think, different passions. Cell phones and kids and cell phones is a big issue. So, any thoughts? Anyone want to kick it off?
I was just going to say I had a chance to review briefly the email that Seth sent out, and I just feel like what's there is outdated compared to what we're dealing with today. The cell phone use at that point in time was not what we're seeing now, and social media was not at the level that it is now. And I think that we need to kind of refocus even away from that data completely, to be honest. Oh, sorry. I think I did have a chance to review briefly the email that Seth sent out, and I think the information is a bit outdated. I think that cell phone use has changed quite a bit since 2017, and I believe that we have a whole new issue on our hands now than what we did then. So it may not even be relevant to our discussion now.
I'll echo. Oops, is this on? I echo that as well. Smart social media and cell phones is a big problem. We're seeing a trend across the country of increased mental health issues, much of which is attributed to the use of these. The distraction within the classroom is huge. We did see that in 2017. But I've been doing a ton of research, and I, for one, would like to see, I'm just going to say no cell phones at school, but I know that's something we'll probably have to work on, but that's just my personal opinion. As a mom, as a grandma, and as a former teacher, back when cell phones wasn't the issue it is today, I've seen the damage it does, and I think that it's continually grown to be a big problem. We in this district talk a lot about mental health, and I think changing this policy and making it much more strict is only going to benefit our students, and that's what we're here for. So I want to do what's best for kids, and I think limiting cell phones at school would be very beneficial. So I have tons more to share, but I'll stop here for now.
I agree. Since 2017, that's for a policy based on a technology that changes quickly. I think it's time to update this policy. I would like to see us take some time to get some feedback from our staff, from our students, especially our advisory group, and our parents, and get some updated information from those groups to use as we look at updating this policy. So that's my primary thought.
I appreciate that Trustee Tinbrink takes a very controlled approach to it, and sometimes is good at backing me off, because I wish we just got rid of them in society, honestly, at this point in time, but that's not going to happen. I think it's the number one thing right now as far as disrupting classrooms. You know, most times I talk with parents. I've yet to talk with a parent, just floated it by friends of mine and acquaintances and colleagues, and I have yet to hear a parent say that's a bad idea. So hopefully it's we draft a policy that's got some teeth to it. When I talk to folks about bullying, it seems like a cell phone or social media is a common denominator, and that's really sad. That if we could think that, gosh, if we could make some policy changes and take that weapon out of kids' hands and out of their minds, I can't think of a bad thing. So I'm totally in favor of, pursuing a way that we can eliminate this as a distraction and something that takes away from, just being a innocent kid and concentrating on academics. They've got enough going on in their lives without this thing. So I'm in full support and look forward to, admin drafting up a real tight policy. That would be my prayer for sure.
Cell phones in school is, I'm on favor of us re-examining this, digging in, seeing what's next. I'm a big proponent of extra time in classrooms, maybe spent not on cell phones. I think there's a lot of books out there to be read, and so, which will not be popular. It's not a popular statement, I know, for some kids, but that's why we're there. So I wonder, knowing that this is all something most of us are passionate about, but in order to make good policy change, it takes more than even us. It's getting people on board and informing. And really, I don't want to put a new policy in place without the procedures for teachers to follow up, because I don't want to create something that's not enforceable. We saw that happen with schools. I want SAG to be able to speak in and be a part of that as well. Mr. Derrick, would you like to maybe give us some
No,
feedback?
thanks, Board Chair and trustees. No, I appreciate the sentiment, actually. I think it's important. What we're seeing, this is more than just a distraction, right? This is a crisis. You talked about different things. We're looking at major depression among teens. It's increased 135% with girls since 2010, 161% increase since 2010 with our boys. Major depression among teens by region in the West, a 181% increase since 2010, which we can correlate to the introduction of the smartphone, which is really kind of an ironic name, but I understand that as well. Percent of U.S. anxiety, the prevalence of it is 161% increase since 2010. This is from, again, U.S. National Survey on Drug Use and Health. So I concur. There's a lot of research here, as Trustee Bierke talked about, that we can look at. I think it is important that we educate. I think that's a big part of this policy update, is an educational component of it. So as much as you said, Mr. Trustee McAndrew, that we just need to move forward, but I think it's more than just a stroke of the pen. I think it's a process of educating our parents, our students, and at the same time understanding that technology is a part of our world. We have the introduction of AI, which is a whole new component that we really haven't dealt with much, and I think that has to be a part of probably this policy as well. How do we help our students grapple with the strength of that tool, but utilizing it in a proper way? And how do we differentiate cell phones with watches and all kinds of gadgets that are out there that are difficult, right? So we're going to have to be able to look at all of that. So I think it is prudent to take some time. I agree. I think we should have some parental voice, student voice, teacher voice, as well as administrator voice in order to create a policy that makes the most sense. But I agree with you, it is a crisis. It's not just a preference. It's not just a distraction. It's more than that for our youth, and we really need to look at it from that vantage point.
Thanks. So, Dr. Hawker, do you have thoughts on, because I know we want to move ahead with this and probably somewhat rapidly. I mean, it's in our area. I think we all want to be leaders in this area as well. Dr. Hawker, my guess is that a motion from us to bring back information, put a workshop together, start that conversation. SAG is obviously not in session, during the summer and that type of thing. So thoughts on a timeline or next steps?
Yes, I think all of the above. As you mentioned, SAG, they have their first meeting generally early October. I think is right. They form after they get back to school and have their first meeting. So if we want to, have their input, we could use September to have some workshop time with you as trustees and work through further details. We certainly have a little better access in September to our staff and our administrators. It's really that student connection piece as they come back. If we want to, which we do, want to involve our SAG, we may need to have their input more in October. So if it's the will of the board, let's have a workshop in perhaps the September timeline, and that can create some additional takeaways, maybe some additional broad surveys to our parents, and that would also allow us to survey our students as a whole, but then also get SAG brought together at the end of September, early October for their input. Does that timeline sound okay?
I think it's I would say it's probably a realistic timeline. So, to do a workshop in September, to bring it back, I think takes.
I wish we were opening the doors
I
with this
know.
policy in place, but I don't always get what I want.
I think
That's
to
for
have
sure.
a
agree,
long-reaching policy that'll last and
Sure. I mean, is there a way to survey people in the summer? I mean,
Probably not. But I was going to say, too, there's a lot of schools, Spokane, California, Alabama, school districts across the country that are implementing cell-free schools. So it might be wise, I know I've shared some stuff with you guys, to look into what's already been done if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and there's already policies in place. A lot of schools, there's a national organization called Wait Until 8. So the research shows 8. 8th grade, not 8 years old. But the research shows the longer you keep the social media away from the kids, the better they are. I've seen research that says 16. I actually like that. And there's a national organization that's called Wait Until 8th grade, not 8 years old. So that's something people could look into. There's a great book called The Anxious Generation. And there is a wonderful podcast that I shared with you. If you're interested, just email me because I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But there's a lot of districts, this is the trend going forward because people have seen what it's doing to our kids.
Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't argue any of that. I think for me, what I need to find out, especially from our staff, you have a really good policy already. The policy specifically says no cell phones. You can use them before and after school, but it's at lunchtime, it's principal discretion at the secondary levels. Outside of that, it's only to be used for educational purposes if they have it. So what I would like to be able to do, obviously, is speak with our administrators, speak with our staff, find out where these breakdowns are, if there are. I certainly hear more challenges, I would say, at the secondary level than perhaps at the elementary level. I've been in elementary teacher classrooms where I've seen the 3 cell phones sitting in a wicker basket on the teacher's desk. And so either the rest of the kids are hiding them and not being brought up, or they're not bringing them to school as the policy says you're supposed to have turned off. So I just want to get, we've not had a formal re-review of this since 2017, really. So I think this is a great opportunity to look at that, because I think your policy that you adopted back then really had a lot of foresight. The big question is what's being done today? Where are the issues? Is it being implemented the way that the policy says it's supposed to be implementing? All of those things, and we need access to our staff to know that.
Thanks. Dr. Hawker, do you need a motion from us, or does that feel like
totally?
enough of a directive
I think you've given me a directive, and we will get to work on that.
And Mr. Derrick?
Yeah, Chair Smith, I just wanted to add one thing. I just want you to know that in our June meeting with our secondary administration, that was a point of emphasis from me as their executive director to say we need to follow our cell phone policy. Obviously, we can't do more than that. From the standpoint that is the board policy, but it is a good policy. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect by any means, and I'm not saying it can't be improved. I think it can be improved, and I think the process that you're talking about will improve it. But there was an agreement from our administration and also I would say enthusiasm to know that, yes, let's really make this a point of emphasis going into this next year. So I just want to state that this is something that's been on our radar. And in fact, one of our middle schools, Woodland Middle School, is piloting a little stricter cell phone policy. Actually, it's not stricter. It's within our board policy, but they're going to require every student to have a locker with a cell phone that's if they have a cell phone, it'll be put in their locker at the beginning of school and then at the end of school and nothing in between. So we're working on some different avenues, and just it'll help us see, what are the challenges to that. But we're making some progress, but I think what you're asking us to do will be a good addition to that.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. Derrick, I appreciate that. I think while I'm not sure it's reasonable to have a new policy by the time school starts, a really good
Yep.
step would be to enforce the policy we do have.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yes.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Hawker. Thanks, Mr. Derrick. All right. Great. There's a consent agenda before us then. Is there a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we're going to move into policy, the first reading for policy 2700 P1, high school graduation requirements. And this is just a first reading. And Katie.
Hi. Good evening, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Bierke, honorable trustees, Superintendent Hawker, and Clerk Southwick. We're here tonight to ask that the board please consider removing the high school graduation requirement for technology. This is a 1-credit requirement that is a local requirement. It is not a state requirement. Recently, Mr. Trent Derrick met with the principals of each of our secondary high schools. And in that meeting, we went through the different, at that time they were called competencies. They're in our board policy. They're very similar to what you might think of as standards. And outlined where in our students' curriculum they're already meeting these competencies. So for example, a core competency is to evaluate and interpret existing knowledge to generate new ideas, products, and processes. Well, that's happening in math, that's happening in science, that's happening in English language arts. Asking kids to use technology ethically, those are things that are being already taught in English language arts. Our students are learning about plagiarism, about citing sources, about all of those kinds of things. And so the idea would be that since they are meeting almost all of these competencies already in other areas of their education, removing this 1 credit would free up space in their day or in their career to take credits that are perhaps more meaningful to them and more a part of their pathways. And so it would also enable our instructors, our current technology instructors, to teach courses and offer courses that might be more geared towards what students want to learn about in technology. So it's kind of a twofold benefit to our system if we do this. And we're asking that that you please consider doing this as soon as this next graduating year. We have students who have already taken technology credits. It wouldn't harm them at all. They would be able to still graduate with those technology credits. But they would be able then to, any student who hasn't yet, would then be able to fill up that remaining credit with something perhaps that might be more meaningful to them continuing forward. So I will yield to Mr. Derrick. Did you want to add?
You know, as a director of secondary ed, again, my goal, I think mandate is to make sure that we have our students adequately prepared to be successful, but not to put unnecessary hoops in front of them. And I think this technology credit has become that. It's something that is just an additional class that they're doing work that they're already doing in all of their other classes. And so if we were able to remove that credit, that local requirement, again, it's not a state requirement, it would give our students a little more flexibility to take those courses that would become more meaningful in their career options that they're looking at.
Great.
So with that, we'll stand for questions.
I don't really have a question, but I do strongly support this. I've had 4 kids take technology credits in the last few years, and the way the courses are structured, I'm really not sure they learned things they weren't already learning in their other classes. And I would prefer to see our technology teachers be able to teach classes that are in addition to what they're already learning in their other classes. So I'm fully on board with this.
Any other questions?
I just think it's great that we're looking at this at the same time as the cell phone. I don't think that was not coincidental. I'm in full support as well. I look forward to seeing what some of the teachers throw out there as far as options are concerned. But this is a great move to eliminate redundancy.
Katie, one quick question, maybe, and I'm sorry that I didn't catch it earlier. In the proposed policy to send out to public comment, it goes, like at Lake City, it goes from 26 to 27 credits in electives. What is that, just to make it more consistent with what we had done before? And then same thing with Venture, it goes from 12 to 13.
Yeah, if you reduce a required class, you're going to add in an elective class.
Thanks,
That's all to
that
keep
makes
the same.
sense.
So the
Thanks.
same number of
I understood
overall
it.
credits. It's just electives they get to choose.
I'm looking at that elective section. Okay, that helps me. Thanks. Great. Trustees, are we ready to push this out maybe to public comment? And so there is a motion there if we want.
I move to accept revisions to policy 2700 P1 and advance it to the public comment period.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move that out to public comment. We then have a policy here, which was made with new legislation. It's regarding policy 3510, medication at school. So is there any presentation on that? It's
We are certainly able to answer any questions. Your director of nursing is here. Leanne, if you have any questions.
hearing no questions. Is there a motion to move this to public
I
comment?
move to accept revisions to policy 3510, medication at school, and advance it to the public comment period.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move that as well out to public comment. Thanks. We've got policy 4200, school support organizations. There was a slight change there in some language, and there was no public comments received on this. Is there a motion or any further discussion? There is a recommended motion right there.
I'll move to approve revised policy 4200, school support organizations as presented.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. That will be updated. Thank you. Next policy is policy 4225 on equipment usage, and no public comments. And this is part of the facility rental fee process and an update there. So is there any discussion or is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve revised policy 4225, equipment usage as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. And we'll go to policy 8110 on safety busing. There was 2 public comments attached, and I'm going to assume that that some of those comments will be followed up with directly, since there was some just comments in there. Is there any questions, trustees, or anything, or is there a motion? There's a recommended motions there as well.
I guess my only question has to do with implementation. Do we know families that might be affected, and are we ready to notify them this week?
Yeah, so thank you, Trustee Tenbrink. Yes, we have a communications plan ready to go out. So as you might recall, I think it was from the May board meeting with some of the safety busing scores. There are, off the top of my head, I think about 600 students or so that will lose transportation as part of the safety busing scoring. And so I believe Ms. Bales has prepared communication for all of those families, but it has not gone out yet.
But it would soon.
Soon.
I just
yeah.
don't want to. Last year,
I don't know the
last
exact
year we
date
were
without
too
talking
late.
to her. Yeah.
So we're okay.
Yes, we
So
wanted to
we're
go out as
planning
soon as
on
possible.
Implementing this come the beginning of school.
Correct.
Okay, and just
And I
to-
could be mistaken on the 600. It might be less than that.
I think
Yeah,
it was-
You would
I think
probably
it
know
was
better
less
than I did.
that.
I think Jeff said less than
And
that.
then just to reiterate what Chair Smith said, that you're going to address the public comments that we received?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And as maybe just a reminder, part of the safety busing is to bring us into alignment with the state.
That's correct. And the number Seth is referring to, if you recall, if we were to follow the state's recommendation on the safety busing guidelines, there would have been over 600 families that would have been affected. We chose not to do that. You've created a lower cut score, if you will, that will allow us to provide that safety busing for our it'll allow us to provide regular transportation to more students by doing that. So I don't have that number off the top of my head, and but it's I don't even dare say, but it's nowhere near the 600. It's much smaller than that. It seems to me it was around 100, even maybe 80 students and families that will have to figure out a different plan for those individuals, but this will allow us to keep more students on the buses as we have a lower score.
Thanks. Thank you for that reminder.
Well, I mean, our score is 50 instead of, I can't remember. They're recommended. But this still, when we had the transportation audit, really the requirement was that we set a number.
Correct.
Correct? So this still meets that
Yep.
requirement. Okay.
And anyone that's interested at our workshop? When did we
believe it was
gather
the
and
May
do this? This
workshop.
was like May. Yeah, so each route is listed in our board packet that can be
Yeah, it
found
was
online.
quite a detailed and lengthy process that our transportation safety committee went through. So they looked at the map of every single building. They went neighborhood by neighborhood to look at whether it was appropriate for students to walk or not. Most of the changes are at the secondary level. And as you might recall, the safety busing zone is a 1.5 mile radius around each school site. And so they went through and reviewed all of those. And honestly, where it was close, they went to providing transportation to our students. So there were a few neighborhoods that were kind of on the cusp, and we chose to continue to provide transportation to those neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. All right, there is a recommended action there if we want to move forward with this. Is there a motion?
I was just going to say before we did make a motion that I really appreciated all the work that went into that. It was very detailed and
Very thoughtful.
yes,
That was
very
what I
much
thought
so.
as well. Yeah.
I move to approve revised policy 8110, safety busing as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move forward. Thanks, Seth, and thanks to Transportation for the implementation. And I, between now and school, I know that will be a lot. So thanks in advance. All right, we'll go ahead and move into our nutrition services RFP and Dr. Hawker.
Yes, thanks. Seth will also walk us through a bid that was presented. I know we had one trustee that was part of that committee as well. So Trustee Tinbrink can add to that. So I'm going to let Seth do the quick presentation first, and then I think it'd be great to have some conversation.
Thank you, Superintendent Hawker, Chair Smith, members of the board. Nothing like starting off with a light and easy decision in your first week in a new position. So some of you might know, but I've been with the district for 10 years as Director of Technology, Safety, and Security, and now I'm stepping into some of Jeff Voller's shoes as well as my own and a few other things to be Deputy Superintendent of Operations. So this is a big decision.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you.
Some people have been saying condolences, which I don't know. As you know, you've been talking about this for quite some time. Nutrition services has struggled in several key areas over the last few years. The key one was mentioned earlier in public comment. Staffing has been a concern, especially with key staff such as the director role. So we had a retirement there. Another person came on board, only stayed a short amount of time. Obviously, with Jeff Voller leaving, that leaves a vacuum in knowledge in a very key area. And there are a lot of regulations when it comes to nutrition services. Budget is another area of concern, and I know you've talked about this at length. Increasing staff and food costs, decreasing reimbursements. Lunch was free for our students during COVID, and that really created some different demands on that department. And then lunch debt, all of those things have led to deficits, which I'll talk more about in just a second. And then this year, through our student advisory group and others, we've heard a lot about food quality. That's been a kind of an ongoing concern of our student advisory group. And our participation rates have been decreasing. So the number of students eating school lunches in our buildings have gone down over time, which makes sense with declining enrollment, right? So if you look at the finances, you'll see year over year kind of an emerging trend. So this shows the surplus or deficit starting in 2018. And so you can see in 2018, there was a deficit in food service of about $342,000. That increased to $488,000 the following year. In 2020 and 2021, both of those years, our reimbursement rates were very high because all of our students qualified for free lunch. Then that goes back to the trend again that we've been seeing the last couple years, $764,000 deficit, $940,000 this last year. So that obviously is not sustainable. And I think in looking at a few different things, when it comes to some of the data, we just don't have the expertise to run this department the way it needs to be run right now with some of the turnover, some of the things that I just mentioned. So with that, and after talking to some of the board, Jeff Voller put out an RFP based on a state template back in June. We hosted walkthroughs at our district facilities on June 18th. We got a lot of questions, and thanks to Jeff and Shannon Johnston, our Director of Finance, as well as Eric Davis, our HR Director, we answered all those questions. On the 2nd of July, we received presentations from both SFE and Chartwells, so two companies that could provide the service. Those presentations were scored by 12 committee members in 12 different categories for a total of 60 points, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. Those 12 committee members were made up of 5 staff from nutrition services, 3 district office staff, 3 students, as well as 1 board member, and thank you to Trustee Tenbrink for joining us there. Then later that same day, we opened proposals from both SFE and Chartwells. Those proposals, which were very lengthy, I think one was 300 pages-ish, the other was about 400 pages, were scored by 6 committee members, so 3 from Nutrition Services, 3 from the district office. And that scoring had 10 categories and 200 points. So I kind of just wanted you to know a little bit about our process. I have done a lot of RFPs over time, and I felt like this was a really good process that we implemented on a very short timeline. Our committee is recommending awarding the RFP to SFE. 10 out of the 12 committee members who viewed the presentations scored SFE's presentation higher, 50 points out of 60 versus 47 for Chartwells. That was on average. And then 5 out of our proposal committee members scored SFE's proposal higher, 1,096 points to 1,088 points. So it was very close. We felt like both companies did a nice job in both their presentation and their proposals, but I'm going to walk through a few things that really stood out to us from SFE's proposal. One thing was that SFE is a chef-led company, so their CEO is a chef. They are also K-12 focused, so they only work with K-12 school districts. They're not a conglomerate. They don't, deal with hotels or anybody else, just K-12, which we felt like was important. Their attention to students and their ability to get student feedback was really key. I thought that was a differentiator. Both organizations talked about that, but it was really clear to me by having some students there especially that SFE was a little bit more focused on kids. The quality of food stood out. And then I think all of our group, the focus on innovation and driving student participation through innovation really stood out to us from SFE. As we discussed it, we felt like this was really looking to the future rather than looking to the past and what things had happened previously, but looking to what kids are focused on now. Another thing that stood out to us was the on-site manager candidate. So both companies would bring in an on-site manager to then work with our existing staff. The one from SFE really stood out in terms of her resume. And also their marketing plan and their 21-day menus just seemed to rise to the top in terms of the type of food that they were proposing, the things that they would be putting in our cafeterias, the marketing materials, the app that they use, all that stuff was part of a really strong marketing plan, we felt like. So that's our recommendation. Included in your packet is a lot of different information. And so as you might recall, this RFP was for a fixed meal rate. So we would be paying this company a fixed rate per meal. So SFE, their rates are there on the left, Chartwells are there on the right. SFE's is a little bit more for sure, and that was something that the committee discussed. One of the things we discussed as we looked at projected revenues, you'll see here that currently our cash sales are there on the left, kind of in the middle. SFE and Chartwells have their projected revenues for cash sales and federal reimbursements. In looking at Chartwell's projected revenues, we did not feel like that was realistic. They were proposing 45% increases in 1 year in cash sales, and we just didn't see any way that was possible with what they proposed to us. We felt that SFE's was a little bit more realistic with a more modest 10 to 11% jump. You can see there, with that aside, their revenues are actually fairly similar in what they would be projecting. On the expenditure side, again, fairly similar. So both would be projecting an annual expenditure of about $3.4 million. The Commodity Credit Center there is a program of the USDA, so that kind of evens out. In the middle there, you can see what it currently is for us. So our expenses this last year were about $3.8 million. for a total loss of almost $940,000. Now that department has a surplus that comes out of, but as you know, that's dwindling. And so after next year, that would start to come out of the general fund. Looking at SFE's proposal, they would be proposing a profit of about $130,000. Chartwell's had some information in their proposal of a projected profit of almost $500,000. However, again, that did not seem realistic, and their proposal explicitly listed some caveats to that surplus. The very first one was that enrollment would stay constant, and we know that's not a reality that we're faced with right now. In terms of other items, I know we've got some employees here tonight, so we were really looking closely at some of the impact on our employees. For SFE, they're proposing a 3% pay increase across the board to all staff, as well as a $500 retention bonus for staff that stay 90 days. They do have medical, dental, vision, and one piece they said is that employees would be eligible if they work 30 hours or more immediately, so there wouldn't be a lapse in coverage. We also looked at paid time off. So SFE is proposing 18 days of paid time off, Chartwell's 13, as well as both companies had a retirement plan. We understand that it's not Percy, and I think that's something that we're sensitive to for sure. There is an employee contribution for SFE, and that was, again, something that set it apart for us. And then in terms of additional impact for employees, I just wanted to mention a couple things. One, I know Eric Davis and HR would be willing to work with any of our affected employees. So if somebody's right at the verge of Percy, we'll try to figure out a way to make that work. Might need to be in a different position, obviously, a different classified position in the district. But I would encourage any of our employees that are worried about Percy, let's find a way to make that work. And then I would like to recommend to the board that for paid leave other than sick leave, that we explore some employee payout options. I think that makes sense to us as a fairness issue. You know, if it's personal leave or vacation leave, something like that, that we do explore paying our employees out. And then unfortunately, the sick leave retirement benefit with Percy, that's an unintended consequence of a state policy that I don't think that we can really do anything about at this point. Again, HR would be more than willing to work with any employee and talk about their specific situation. And then lastly, other impacts. I'm not sure if all of you knew this, but Coeur d'Alene is part of a food purchasing co-op of 10 districts in Region 1. By us moving to contracted services, we would obviously be leaving that co-op, and so that would be about 30% of their purchasing power that's lost to that co-op. And so I've met with those districts and talked to them a little bit about what the ramifications would be. I don't necessarily think that changes our scenario, especially when we're closing a school to make up a $6 million deficit. This is a really hard decision, similar to that of closing a school, and that's how I've been treating it as I've been reviewing proposals. Another impact that I will come back to the board with is around lunch debt collection. This has been a growing issue for some time, and I think it's really important that we address it to ensure the financial stability of that department. And so later this summer, we'll bring back to you a couple. It may or may not be a policy. I didn't see that there's an existing policy around lunch debt, but it might just be a recommendation to how we handle some of that lunch debt. So, and with that, I will stand for any questions.
Unfortunately not, no.
So, couple questions. One, the budget basically for this, is this based on our current lunches? Yes?
Yeah, so they asked for a lot of data. So we provided data 5 years back on how many lunches students were consuming. Yeah, and so they're doing some projections based on the numbers that we gave. One thing that I was really surprised by was how low our participation percentage is compared to, you know, like national averages and stuff. You know, we're like around 30%, I think, and other districts see significantly higher than that, which was partly why we thought SFE would be a good fit just because they're focused on student participation as a way to grow the program.
Okay, and one more question. On the retirement that they're offering, do you have to work a number of years before you're vested in their retirement program?
Eric, can you answer that?
Or is that something they get immediately? How does that work?
No, based on our understanding, and Mike is here from SFE, and he may be able to. Our understanding is that when they are an employee, they are enrolled in a I believe it was a 2% contribution to their 401k immediately. That increases 1% every year up until it gets to 8%. So it is a growing retirement plan that the company contributes to. And I believe it's whether or not the employee chooses to contribute. Okay, see, I read right. So yeah, it is, and it starts right away.
Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you.
Did you say that steps to 8%? Yes. Was that right?
Yes.
Guys have any questions? So just curious, so we're with a co-op, which 30% of, we reflect 30% of, do those other participants, there's 10 of them in there, do those 9 run at a deficit as well?
They don't necessarily. I don't know all the details about all of their districts, but we did talk a little bit about that. We're by far the largest school district in the area, and so our budget and deficit is way larger than theirs in terms of food service. Most of them said yes, post-COVID, they have run small deficits, but nothing like what we ran this year.
Because, yeah, I'm just kind of, without having any comps, I'm just kind of curious as to why we're this mammoth deficit as opposed to other places that are.
So I went back 20 years, and I can tell you that in food service, the surplus and deficit has kind of been like that over 20 years. It's been pretty consistent. It's just gotten bigger and bigger, so the swing has been much larger than it used to be in the past.
Yeah, I was just going to add, without the COVID years where the federal government reimbursed 100% of the kids that participated in lunch, we'd be even at a bigger deficit than our million. The federal government just continues to reduce reimbursement rates, and nothing seems to ever get any cheaper at a grocery store. We all know that. So it's not a win situation for any school district there. As salaries increase and costs of food increase, but your federal reimbursement decreases, you can see that's what creates the $900,000 deficit we have today.
Seth, what are the barriers between going back and doing some of the collections internally? What are the hangups right now?
I'm still kind of getting a handle on some of that. One change that we've made already is with our new website comes a new communication system as well. And so we can automatically notify parents of a negative lunch balance via text, via email, via phone call. And so we're going to start doing that right away. We weren't doing that previously, and I'm not sure the history of why not. So we'll start doing that with this next school year. One of the things we might bring back to you is how much debt you would like to allow our students to go into when it comes to lunches, and then what our food service staff should do when students are out of money on their account. And I know that's been a point of contention in the past. A previous board discussed that and kind of set where we were, but that was, again, pre-COVID. It was probably around 2017. It's probably time to revisit that and find a way forward.
I had a question. So this is a 5-year contract?
It's actually a 1-year contract with 4 one-year renewals.
Okay.
Yes.
And are we committed to all 5, or, I mean, can we see how it goes this year and then?
The way it's stated is that the district has the option to renew it each year.
Have other districts seen an increase in costs after the first introductory year?
So what I was going to point out, I believe it's renewal for us. So we stick to these terms.
At these terms. So
at
our
these terms
renewal
and
would be at
continue
these.
on. Yes.
These terms, not at. we often hear other insurance.
Yes.
We see other
and
insurance
we were
things, so
aware
I
of
just want
that,
to
and
make sure that.
that was part of our thinking with SFE over Chartwells. And I wanted to point out, this was something that we came across in our due diligence. So this is a district in Sunnyside, and this was from one of their letters of recommendation. They basically were in a similar position, and they initially went with Chartwells at $500,000 as a projected surplus, and then that obviously did not come to fruition. They ended up seeing $400,000 deficit, and then moved to SFE and saw surpluses of over $2 million a year. So that was pretty eye-opening for us. And it kind of, for me, solidified something that I was already thinking when I was looking at some of their numbers, that they just didn't seem realistic based on where we were currently. So
This is an aside from whether we contract or not, maybe, but just as someone who was in both presentations, I enjoyed the SFE presentation. Their food was good. They're very excited and enthusiastic, so looking between the two companies, I think this one is my preference. Now, that's a separate decision from do we contract or not. But, yeah.
And that was true for 10 out of the 12 committee members that saw both presentations. Yeah.
Can I ask what our fixed meal rates are right now?
So this last year, so the fixed meal rate is what we would pay the vendor. But as far as what it cost this last year, I believe it was like $5.70 a meal is what it cost us to provide each meal to our students.
Okay. So that's great.
But how much are we charged? I can't remember what our lunch rates are.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Because we just changed it.
Well, that was, I
That's
wasn't
a different
asking how much we charge. I was just wondering what our fixed costs are.
What we charge? The board just bumped it up a little bit ago.
Can I ask them what they're?
Same meeting.
It was $3.50, did you say? $3.50.
$3.50 for breakfast or lunch?
For lunch.
$3.50 for lunch. $50 for lunch.
So just to be clear, we're talking about two different things
Fully
here.
understand.
Yeah, because
Yeah, this is
Part
what's
of that's
charged.
reimbursed.
You're talking about what's charged our students and families.
Yes. Yeah.
What I showed was what we would actually pay the
the
company to
company.
provide it. And so that's how you would build up a surplus, right? Is you charge the students hopefully more than what we're taking in. That's not been the case for a number of years now, which is why we're seeing such huge deficits. It just costs us more than we're charging to provide every lunch.
So Seth, will you reiterate how much it's been costing us this last year?
I believe it's
provide each meal?
$5.70 a meal.
And we were charging less than the $3.50
Correct.
that we've decided to change.
Which is why a couple months ago, we came to you and you guys adjusted the fees. But that was not going to cover all their costs. It was just to cover enough to delay the deficit.
This is one of the companies that we saw when we were
We talked
at conference as well.
Good, yes.
We were both really
Had an
impressed by.
opportunity to try them, I think, in Texas, and their food was delicious.
trustees, are we able to make maybe a decision and move forward? As someone who, I deal with food service in my professional life right now on a daily basis. It's hard work, food costs, and managing all the kids and their unique needs is a big deal. And so I do want to, again, just commend those of you who have served the district faithfully. I appreciate that that HR is willing to work with everyone's individual situations, and I really want to value that, being a year away from Percy. And so I trust the work that you're going to do there, Eric, to manage that. And so thank you in advance for that. Trustees, are we in a spot? Does anyone?
I guess my only other question
Any more?
is, are you confident we can be good? I mean, it's July, right? So we can be ready
It's definitely a short
ready
timeline for sure.
when school starts?
I mean, I would say I'll be concerned with that, but both companies have done this a lot. They have timelines and project managers to get it all going as soon as possible. So, I mean, will we be, end of the year ready by day one? Probably not, but we'll be ready for the first day of school for sure.
And we continue to own all of our kitchen equipment.
Correct.
Yes.
When it breaks, who pays? Do we maintain do all the
We still
maintenance on
maintain
that?
our
You know what I
kitchens,
mean?
yep.
And so,
Yeah, we would still maintain our kitchen.
It definitely seems like the pay is a lot more generous than the alternative as well. So I would be in supportive of SFE as well.
there is a recommended action there. Did you need Dr. Hawker, to direct some of those HR pieces as well? I thought I had heard that early on.
I would definitely want some direction on the buyout piece, like to pay out for any
Okay.
personal leave other than sick.
Do we have precedent for that for other positions and things like this has
We do
that
do
has
that at
happened?
times, yeah.
Me-
Yeah, but this is a unique situation, and
Yeah.
people deserve to be paid out for what they
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
we're turning a deficit, $900,000 into a potential, turn it up to 150,000 in revenue. I think we can make that right.
Yeah.
I move to approve the nutrition services contract award as presented.
Can we let's wrap that other piece though,
Yeah.
maybe into that motion. So that's the first part. And so do you want to add to that and
Oh, yeah, with the buyout terms as presented.
So let's just be clear then, make sure on the buyout. So personal leave days, buyout. Any remaining personal leave days would be paid out as a standard practice, which is generally what we would do anyway. So just make sure you're all good with that. So the motion would be to approve the contract as presented, and also to buy out any employee that chooses, all employees with their personal leave days.
Correct.
Eric, does that cover what you
in
need?
the food service department?
In the food
In the food service
department. Good.
Just
There you go.
I can second that.
any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you. Thanks for all your work on that. And all right. Next up, we have a discussion regarding a potential resolution 25-01. And so, Dr. Hawker, do you want to?
Yes, we have presented to you for possible action, Resolution 2501, which has been presented before you. Any resolution that you choose to want to present to the Idaho School Boards Association is required to be submitted to them by July 31st, I believe. And then they compile a list of all of the resolutions that any district created. They present those to the body of all school board members that attend the state conference in November with a vote. And you vote on each resolution, whether you support them or not. And then any of those resolutions that do receive a do pass recommendation by more than 50% vote, they become items of focus for the School Boards Association. So this resolution has been drafted. I have spoken with superintendents of neighboring school districts, and they're all in favor of this resolution as well. So we may see some additional boards that would support this exact resolution by the end of the month. But this resolution would simply allow you to perhaps go to the public for your levy rather than doing that every 2 years. You could do that up to 6 years. Right now, you have a rule. The law says you can either do 1 year or 2 years or forever. Those are your three choices. And we know from a staff perspective that doing the levy every 2 years is very, very difficult on your staff. no, because it's 25% of your budget, the way Idaho funds schools, they rely on local support for that remaining 25%, and that's right where we're sitting. We think that if you had the ability to go up to 6 years, we could talk with our community and see if they would support going to something other than 2, anything between 2 and 6. If there's no support, then of course you would just keep it your normal 2-year cycle. But if the community felt like we could support 4 years, then you would have bought yourself a 2-year window where your staff wouldn't be wondering whether they have positions, and the community wouldn't be constantly being asked for those necessary funds. So that resolution is presented for you. We'll be happy to answer any questions. But like I say, if we do want to submit any resolution, it's due by the end of the month.
Dr. Hawker, does this essentially take the perpetuity off the table then by going this route instead?
For us, it would. Yes, our ask would be now you could go up to 6.
So
You'd still be able to. I mean, in theory, other districts could choose to try and
Correct.
go with perpetuity, but it would give us that option to not pull everybody and tax them with 40% of their time dedicated towards a levy every 2 years. So we would use it for those purposes.
is the 1 year listed on here because that's currently in statute? I'm not a fan of the 1 year.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're saying 2 years
Yeah.
is too much, 1 year for sure is too much.
I think with the and obviously these laws were put into place long before but back when I was in the state, I think the intent was that a supplemental levy could be possibly used for a one-time something. So it's not necessarily, back when funding was different, it could be used in different manner. So maybe there was a project or something that the community and the board felt like we would only need to do for 1 year. And so they created the law to do a 1 year or a 2 year or a forever. And those were your options.
So just to clarify, because I'm not sure you answered my question, the 1 year is there
Correct.
because it's currently in statute.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
1, 2, or forever.
okay. Just wanted to make sure.
And really, just to clarify, this only encourages ISBA to go.
100%.
And-
Yes, it just encourages ISBA. The next step would be to find any legislators that perhaps would be of willing to support this, and then it gets presented, which generally takes years to even accomplish that. So I think you'd be very fortunate to hear a conversation this year, but hopefully there's enough interest in something like this that you would be able to hear the conversation even into a future year where maybe something chooses to happen.
As a taxpayer, I like it because it allows you to put some guardrails in place as well and operate and stick to what your numbers are that you present within the verbiage at the ballot box. So I think it could be a win-win all around and less turmoil in our community for a happy median. That's my hope anyhow.
Absolutely.
Probably the most frequent comment I got March of 2020, whatever year, was, why can't you do something between 2 years and perpetuity? I think to most people that makes sense. So I like it.
Great. Yeah. There is a motion before us if someone wants to make that. And then from there, one of us, if this motion goes, one of us will present then in November to ISBA and advocate and
Ladies first. Anybody?
I move to approve Resolution 25-01, education funding as presented.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right.
Thank you for putting that
5-0.
together.
Great. So, Ms. Southwick, then you end up sending this to ISBA, and then we'll hear the next thing. So, terrific. Thanks. There's some additional information there for the graduation requirement, kind of just some updates.
And Chair Smith, can I just add,
go ahead.
that is just a redo of, if you remember, the graduation policy that we asked you to approve is a procedure. And so we just wanted to make sure you're double clear. It's the same. There's no difference. This is the same thing. Generally speaking, procedures are administratively created, and we just inform you of those. But in this specific graduation requirement one, you have a graduation policy that says you will follow a procedure. And then the procedure, we just want to make sure that that is one of those one-off procedures that is always board approved if we're going to make a change. So we put it in, it's kind of in both places there. But it's just wanted to share that out.
Great, thanks. Next date is August 12th for our regular board meeting, and then we'll have a workshop retreat day at the end of August, the 28th. So, is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, enjoy the rest of the sunshine.
So we have